All right, I think we're going to get ready to get started for our next panel, which is going to feature the topic of suicide prevention in Indian country with a focus on specialized holistic care for Native veterans. I am so incredibly thrilled to welcome to the stage, who I feel like they're my new friends now, Stacey Owens with the Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison, who is the Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison at SAMHSA, Cicely Burrows McElwain, the Director of the State and National Implementation Community-Based Interventions for Suicide Prevention Programs at SAMHSA, and once again, Ivan Sam, Cultural Ambassador for the Veterans Art Project. So let's welcome them to the stage. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off.
Hold on, I'm going over here.
Okay.
So far away.
Have to have balance. All right, I'm going to get us kicked off. I'm Stacey Owens. I serve as the Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison here at SAMHSA, here with Cicely and Ivan, and we're really grateful to be invited to talk about promoting suicide prevention among American Indian and Alaska Native veterans. Make sure I get my clicker here. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that we're going to be talking about the topic of suicide, which I know for many of us, we've been affected by suicide, both personally and professionally. And when we talk about the topic of suicide, we're not just talking about numbers, we're talking about people. And I know that for many of you, the motivation for the work that you do and the reason why you're here at this summit focused on healing is that you are dedicating your life's work to someone you've lost, perhaps. So we thank you for the work that we do together. And thank you for being here. So for today's talk, we wanted to describe the history of our collaborative efforts with VA and SAMHSA focused on suicide prevention for service members, veterans, and their families. We wanted to talk about identifying the strengths, challenges, and solutions in supporting well-being for American Indian and Alaska Native service members, veterans, and their families, and also discuss opportunities for culturally centered technical assistance for American Indian and Alaska Native SMVF suicide prevention moving forward. But first, we did want to talk about this legacy. And we sincerely appreciate Ivan and the other veterans who were on the panel before us. We appreciate their service. And as Chief Bill mentioned, American Indian and Alaska Native people have an exemplary tradition of military service and sacrifice, serving at one of the highest rates per capita of any ethnic group. American Indian and Alaska Native veterans have served in every major conflict in the history of the U.S. military. Even before this group had the right to vote. We know about the history of the Code Talkers being so instrumental in both World War I and World War II. And the most recent census data shows that about 334,000 of our U.S. veterans identify as being American Indian and Alaska Native. We also know that family legacy is so important, even for those who've not served. Service is such an important part of family legacy. You hear, my grandfather served, my father served, my sister served, my niece served. So we know that military service impacts families and generations. Taking a look at the data as it pertains to suicide, you see the section in the middle shows 6 groups that have been identified by the CDC as being at high risk for suicide. And you see that veterans and tribal people are both represented there as groups that are high risk. With the bar graphs, the bar graph on the left represents people who identify as male who died by suicide, and the bar graph on the right identifies people who identify as female who've died by suicide, both by ethnic group. And you see that on the top of both of those bars, both men and women, non-Hispanic American Indian and Alaska Native people are both represented as dying by suicide at the highest rate of any ethnic group. While we're talking about this data that's very tough to see, we also want to highlight some resources and some anchors for hope. We hope that everyone in the room is familiar with 988, which was launched as the nation's first 3-digit number for suicide crisis back in 2022. 988 is available for all of us. Through SAMHSA and VA partnership, there's access to the Veterans Crisis Line where veterans and their supporters can press 1. And roughly 1 out of 5 calls to 988 actually goes to the Veterans Crisis Line with our veterans and their families connecting. I'll also mention that the state of Washington has an option to press 4 when their residents dial 988, and that connects them to the Native and Strong Lifeline, which has American Indian counselors who answer that lifeline for special resources. On the SAMHSA side, we do have a number of grants that are related to suicide prevention and behavioral health wellness for American Indian and Alaska Native people. We also have our Office of Tribal Affairs and Policy, which is our primary point of contact for tribal nations and communities. That webpage has all of our grants that focus on the American Indian and Alaska Native population. I'll also mention that the VA, in their annual suicide prevention report, they have data compiled for the American Indian and Alaska Native population, as well as resources there that are specifically related to suicide prevention.
Thanks so much, Stacy, for that introduction, and thank you all for your time with us today. It's been, again, an honor to sit on stage with Ivan for this component of our discussion, but also to look out in this audience and see a number of faces who have helped to inform the work we're going to be talking about, Dr. C and others. In particular, we wanted to give a brief overview of the work and how the collaboration has started, because we heard today many folks talk about how do we get federal systems to pay attention to the knowledge and the wisdom that our tribal communities have tried to share for many generations. And this process is one that I want to first acknowledge the role that Chief Bill, Ivan, and others on our Federal Advisory Council, both at SAMHSA, the Federal Advisory Council at SAMHSA and the Federal Advisory Council at the VA, helped to raise to our awareness and also to champion this cause. So thank you for that. In particular, the work that we've been doing in the space of suicide prevention has focused on a public health approach to suicide prevention, one that on your screen right now, kind of in a very simplified math approach, talks about the value of combining our community-based interventions alongside our clinical-based interventions to really take a holistic approach to healing and understanding how to support our service members, veterans, and their families to be strong and resilient and to address the issue of suicide that we lose so many of our nation's family members to each year. This approach is one kind of example, I think, after our last 2 days of talking about how do we really focus on the power of community, the power of connection, and staying healthy. One that feels probably very common sense, right? When you look at this, almost why do we have to explain the idea of coming together as a community to support one another, especially those who have served and also suffered a lot of trauma that we just heard about from our last panel. But in particular, this approach is one that has in Western culture been something that we've had to promote and talk about and train on and really help get communities behind. And so together with our partnership at SAMHSA, we've been able to move forward a model of community-based suicide prevention that has stirred and connected with folks all across the 50 states and the 5 territories to date, but really had been missing the tribal nation voice at the table for much of the last few years of the work. If we go to the next slide, we will just talk briefly a little bit about the model that has been introduced, one that was informed by partners at this EDC with strategies that help to inform the work that communities may take on as part of their coalition models. In particular, the first one being identification of our service members, veterans, and their families, ensuring that we know that many of us wear many hats, but oftentimes, especially in care settings, the identification and even asking about veterans status and has you or a loved one ever served is something that really is still taking a while for our systems to embrace and adopt. That has been one of the biggest champions of the strategies that we've rolled out nationally and that we really hope will allow for folks to be identified in that space. The other one is screening for suicide risk. We recognize the importance of that and have really looked at how do we empower and enlighten other folks, not just in clinical settings, to understand how to train and address and recognize risk for suicide. The second one is promoting connectedness and improving care transitions. Many of the speakers that you've heard over the last 2 days spoke to the value of having peers play a role in connecting, having that person who has that lived experience that you have lived, even if the same path was not walked, similar enough connections to help to inform their process and getting that connectedness in a number of different settings, whether they be across the communities that we live in and work in, and as well as looking at the roles that everyone has to play in that connectedness component. Improving care transitions is another area for the strategies that have been promulgated in this approach, as well as in our final approaches, the increasing of lethal means safety and safety planning conversations. So for those that work in suicide prevention space, these strategies are probably not new. To many of you, though, they may look very different from one community to the next, and that's what we've learned over our time together in partnering with SAMHSA, and the technical assistance that we were able to move forward around these strategies was delivered in a way that had brought together a lot of critical partners around the table. And if we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the process, the previous process that was used to introduce some of this work, and then where we're going next. So with community engagement up until this point, there's been an invitation process to states and territories, governors that would take on such a challenge that we called it, the Governors and Mayors Challenge up until this point. And the process would include orientation calls, getting buy-in from partnership organizations to join together on this coalition work, bringing folks together to do some gap analysis about what some of the community issues and concerns are, identifying the strengths within those communities, and also opportunities for growth and development. Together, we would bring together subject matter experts around the country and engage in a strategic planning session that would take up to 2 years to go from the strategic planning all the way into the implementation of that work. And as we had mentioned, what we learned quite a bit from implementation of this work is that there's a lot of great strength in the ability to have the power to convene communities to share with one another. And that is where we also recognized a need for equity in the space to address our tribal nations and engage with tribal nations to do that for our American Indian and Alaska Native veterans and their families who have been disproportionately impacted by suicide. So I'll pause there and let Stacy talk a little bit about where we're going next in the approach.
As Cicely mentioned, we've had this partnership between VA and SAMHSA since 2018, and I'd like to thank Dr. Miriam Delphin-Rittman, who's in the audience, for her leadership at SAMHSA in support of this initiative. And as Cicely indicated, we were looking at how we can really be more intentional about suicide prevention for our American Indian and Alaska Native veterans. And probably about 2 years ago, we were thinking about this process, and we were thinking about the idea of creating a virtual training tool. and wanted to bring together a group of subject matter experts to talk about that topic, whether they thought that it was a good idea and their input on how to make that successful. So in February of 2023, we gathered a small group in Oklahoma City. We were grateful that partners at the IHS Oklahoma area office hosted us in their space, and talked about this idea of a virtual training tool. And we had a really great group of subject matter experts that was really transparent with us in their feedback. And they said, well, let's take a step back and talk about this governor's challenge thing that you all do, and let us offer you some feedback around that concept. So the feedback that they gave us was that current Governor's Challenge Academy model, in order to be most impactful for American Indian and Alaska Native veterans, would really require a new approach. They gave us feedback that receiving an invitation for a tribal community or a tribal nation to participate in an initiative such as this, to receive that invitation through the governor's office, was not honoring tribal sovereignty, and that the term governor in and of itself carries remnants of historical trauma. We received feedback and recommendations around culturally centered models that exist, such as SAMHSA's GONA model and the GOAN model, and really looking at integrating existing customs and traditions that already exist within tribal nations and communities. Next slide. And this is the group that gathered back in February 2023, kind of where our journey started in this process. We had various staff from both SAMHSA and VA, as well as some of our grantees and contractors that work in the suicide prevention space. We also had great support from SAMHSA's Office of Tribal Affairs and Policy, as well as VA's Office of Tribal and Government Relations. We had representatives from National Indian Health Board, as well as NCUI, and a total of 12 tribal nations represented in the small gathering in Oklahoma. Next slide. And we were able to capture some graphic notes from that meeting to really indicate what was shared together in that space. When we started the meeting, we went around the room and asked folks what their hopes were for the meeting. And as you see there, lots of different hopes were shared, things that really stick out to me and stick with me as we've moved forward in this process. One that you see on the far left there in the middle, dispel the long shadow of suicide loss. And that really speaks to how suicide loss impacts all of us over generations, and how we really have to move forward together in order to address that impact. Also on the far right at the top, there was a quote that was shared, "Do more than write on big paper." Sometimes when we come into meetings like this, government meetings, we pull out that butcher paper, stick it to the wall, come up with some ideas, and then somebody folds that up and puts it in a box and you never see it again. So the urging for us to do more than that is something that definitely sticks with me as we move forward in this work. Next slide. And as we indicated, we talked about both the idea of an educational tool as well as the governor's challenge in general. So there was lots of feedback that was shared there. On the left at the bottom, you see a quote that says, "Make American Indian and Alaska Native people feel included, not manipulated." That definitely sticks with me in this work, really being inclusive and honoring cultural wisdom. And on the right, you see the term celebrate and educate. That's something that we reference often, celebrating the resilience of our American Indian and Alaska Native veterans, as well as educating folks on the needs, educating folks on the programs that already exist to support, and talking about how we can expand that support. Also utilizing resources and best practices that have already been created by tribal nations. You see that down on the bottom right. And in doing this work, we've learned about so many impactful and significant programs that are impacting our veterans on the local level and just working together to really elevate those practices to a national level.
So the approach was, we knew we had our marching orders from this small but mighty group of folks that came together in Oklahoma, and we knew that we needed to ensure that there was representation through all aspects of the program planning. And while none of you may be shocked that as government entities we are moving slow, it's actually intentional this time. We really wanted to ensure that as we started to have conversations with tribal and nation representatives, organizations, our veterans groups, that we did our very best to hear from a very diverse group, because the recognition of diversity, not only in this room with us today, but across our nation and across tribal nations, was really a critical message that we took from our group in particular. So how are we going to get implementation about creating a new strategic planning process for communities in a way that was going to be the most impactful? We approached this with having conversation and using story and using listening sessions that would allow us to hear from community members, veterans, their families, and those that serve and love them. In particular, we wanted to do that over the last year and a half. We took from Oklahoma Forward the invitation for a number of organizations to host us to come and have conversations at national convenings. We also got to visit some of our amazing colleagues in the state of Alaska, where we got to meet some of the folks from South Central Foundation, and we're hosted by the Alaska Native Heritage Foundation. So many different organizations that just came with willingness to say, because we believe in the path you're taking, we're going to give you a chance to come and connect and talk to our people and to share a little bit about where we're going, and we'll also give you the guidance that we think you may need in this space to do the right thing. And so together with a number of folks you see here on the board and at all of those events and beyond, plus a couple of virtual events, we got some great feedback as well. In particular, we learned that, again, this idea of a new approach didn't require us necessarily to not look at the science. It actually required us to look at the science, but then also look at where is the data that has yet to be shared and has yet to be elevated to the main stage that we need to bring to the conversation. And so getting information from communities around kind of where we wanted to ensure that we could have conversations led us to having a gathering in Minnesota in the month of August. And that gathering allowed us to bring together experts that could not only take the information we had gotten from these listening sessions, but also move that information forward in a way to talk through, in particular, thank you, Stacy, to talk through, in particular, some of the next steps for building out a model that we hope to launch this year. So in particular, the listening session feedback talked about a lot of areas where we needed to recognize those best traditional healing practices, which is why we were so excited to have a moment with all of you in these 2 days to talk a little bit about where things were going, but also to talk through how we do a better job of informing one another about those best practices and have a place for those to take root, so to speak, which is why I love our graphic notes in this one, specifically that image of the tree allowing us to understand kind of where are the current efforts that have grown strong roots that need to be kind of recognized as foundational to this work. And then additionally, as we moved forward and we looked at the prevailing attitudes for the work, I think it's just reinforcing to some of the messages you've heard over the last 2 days. We have to recognize generational trauma. We have to recognize some of the wisdom that has come from sharing of the pain that our service members, veterans, and their families have experienced from one generation to the next. And we have to use that knowledge to move forward in helping to kind of get over the stigma of having conversations on a really tough issue like suicide prevention. Those attitudes sometimes feel incongruent with a warrior ethos, but when we talk to our veterans that you've heard from even here today, you recognize the importance of the bravery it takes to talk about that pain. And so really there's a lot of synergy in the healing that happens in being willing to take those next steps and have those conversations. Together, the graphic notes that have been put on this paper are just a sampling of some of the really informative areas that we knew that people wanted to kind of get in front of the conversation as we built out the model. But they really also helped us identify where were the needs of support and the strategies that needed to be taken on. And one of those in particular, if we look at that slide, is around this idea of education and awareness. So how do we kind of achieve wellness through sharing our wisdom with one another? And you've done all of that over the last hours that we spent together in these last few sessions. Imagine how powerful that would be if all of our communities had a regular way to make that connection and share that healing, the good medicine that you've talked about the last few days, but also talked about how they've done policy improvements within their communities to make that change. From the 4 states that are doing the waiver to be able to then be the experts to share on the next technical assistance call for the new states that are applying. All of those things that we can harness and convene as government to ensure that our communities are thriving. Those areas of support really also elevated the conversation around peers. So thanks to all of you that support a peer in this space and or serve in that role. And also this idea of elevating and conversating around data and ensuring that we address some of the disparities and even how we are identifying American Indian Alaska Native lives within the data that we collect. So we had such informative components that were allowing us to move forward as we had these really hard conversations about how we crafted something that had been done before but needed to be reimagined in a way that would be really powerful. So Stacey, I'll let you take us into the next session.
Thanks, Cicely. Yeah, I agree with Cicely that we are really honored that we have this ability in the federal space to convene, connect folks, and provide support. And all the listening session notes that you saw on the previous slides, we took those and we created an agenda for a gathering that we held in Minneapolis in August. At that gathering, we had about 115 attendees. About half of those were representing federal agencies, VA, SAMHSA, IHS, CDC, Department of Education, and others. And about half of the individuals there were representing community-based organizations that are located in tribal nations and communities and serving folks there. I see a number of familiar faces that were either at the gathering or at one of the listening sessions over the past year, or represent agencies that were connected in any way. So thank you so much for participation and collaboration. I wanted to touch on the goal of the gathering itself. That goal was to bring together partners from federal spaces, tribal nations, and tribal communities to really support the drafting of a framework for a new strengths-based, culturally centered technical assistance approach. We do continue to provide support to the Governor's Challenge Framework Initiative, where we have all 50 states participating, but it's also very important to us to craft this new culturally centered technical assistance approach to really be intentional and impactful with connecting with tribal nations and tribal communities. Cicely talked about the idea of equity, and we talk about that a lot, but you know, the definition of equity is if there's a group that needs additional support, you give additional resources, and that's what we're doing through this new model. At the August gathering, we brought together this group and spent time in 4 different subject matter expert teams. I'll talk about those teams a little bit on the next slide. Oh, well, I'm on the next slide already. Thank you, Cicely. But we used those recommendations to inform the development of inaugural programming for this current fiscal year. And those 4 subject matter expert teams were focused on 4 pieces of the process that we heard feedback on through our listening session over the year or so. And those 4 teams were focused on participation engagement and team building process. The second group was focused on the on-site technical assistance and support. So what happens when we physically go to those communities for the VA SAMHSA technical assistance visits. The academy structure, which is our convening of a large group, what components should be included in that structure, as well as thoughts on strategic priorities for what are most important to encourage communities to focus on as we are building strategic action plans for suicide prevention for American Indian and Alaska Native Service members, veterans, and their families. So we have Ivan Sam on stage here, and we intentionally, Cicely and I talked first to give Ivan a break because he was on the previous panel. So we appreciate him being on stage back to back. But Ivan served as one of the facilitators for one of these subject matter expert team breakouts, specifically the strategic priorities review. So Ivan, I would love to hear about your experience as a facilitator at this August gathering and for you to take us through the next few slides.
Yes, thank you. So strategic plan is an appropriate goal as long as it has built-in sustainability. Through this strategic priorities team, we were tasked with identifying the top suicide prevention strategies with tribal communities. Our recommendations started with the consideration that priorities may be individual to each community and should not be prescribed. We also wanted the opportunity to explore foundational documents that are culturally relevant and authored by tribal affiliated experts. During the plenary session, the team offered their top 3 priorities, which was community connectedness, which equals to holistic cultural healing, supportive services, and tribal infrastructure, care transitions and system coordination. And additionally, the team wanted consideration to be given to the overarching theme of intertribal knowledge sharing, data collection, tribal sovereignty. We can go to the next slide. Oh, we are in the next slide already. So when we look at this diagram, I want you guys to take a look at it for a quick minute and just kind of explore a little to see what you see out there that stands out for you. So through this experience, from the community perspective, we saw that there was historical and military trauma living in 2 different worlds. You know, where do I fit in? What if I don't fit in? You know, through that process, we had voices of Native veterans that spoke up. We carry the pain from our ancestors, and that trauma comes with us into the military. I know in the last group that I was in, we kind of spoke a little bit about that, you know, talk about historical trauma, being layered with your military trauma. So we had veterans that kind of shared their experiences. With Vietnam veteran experience, there wasn't pride for Vietnam war veterans, being that they were labeled when they came home as being murderers and, you know, killers, and, you know, some of them, when they returned home, people were always staring at them. They were separated. They felt like they didn't belong back into their community. You know, it was they went through a lot of hardship going through that process of trying to find their place back into their families and their communities. And then the Native women's veterans perspective is they felt like they were being overlooked in the military. They were underrepresented, you know. Some of them felt like, you know, they had the need to wear regalia with their uniforms. just to be recognized in that way, to be looked at as being a part of equal to the men. And then also, you know, data-driven approach we talked about, you know, examine data, suicide means, demographics, hospitalization, risk factors, be mindful of region-specific factors. And then going back across to community-based plus clinically based, full public health model, you know, we tried to bring this approach with cross-agency collaboration too. You know, IHS and the VA and, you know, SAMHSA, we're trying to create this unique program to move forward to create this new pilot program, you know. So through that process, you know, what we learned is that, you know, we came up with these importance of data collection. You know, we need the numbers to understand like where we're at within our own society. You know, that will give us a lot more information just to kind of give us an idea of where we're at as a community or where we're at within our own, you know, country as well. So if we can go to the next slide. And then from the recommendations for a new approach, you know, honoring tribal sovereignty in the invitation process, you know, a lot of our members that attended the August gathering felt like, you know, they had their own different struggles within their own demographics. You know, each community felt like, you know, they had their own different struggles where they came from. You know, Alaska, you know, they might have their own different struggles of what's going on in South Dakota or even on the Navajo Nation. You know, there's many different demographics that we're dealing with here. So we took that examination and you know, engaging in critical partners in urban and rural areas as well, you know. So now we're trying to look for different community areas where it's rural and then in urban communities as well to bring that approach, you know, trying to bring those services to our communities like that. So going back full circle, you know, culturally centered, you know, programs, technical assistance, reaching out to other programs to get their support, you know, strategic priorities, let's make life worth living within the community, tribal infrastructures, limited infrastructures may affect a tribe's capacity, transportation, housing, healthcare, funding access, to fully participate in mental health efforts. You know, that's the feedback that we got from our participants at the Minneapolis event. So just sharing a little bit about that, logistical planning, agenda design, cultural considerations, and best practices is what we came up in. Gathering of Native Americans, going off framework is what we were looking at as well, because that approach came from an indigenous perspective, which we felt like, you know, could bring a lot of support, you know, coming from an indigenous perspective in that way. So just want to share a little bit about, you know, what we've been discussing and where we're going from here.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Ivan also did some, in addition to facilitation at the event, he taught us good medicine. He actually did an event for us where he shared some of his knowledge around creating medicine bags. We had, after a full day of activities, I think it was 5 p.m. When we even got started, and we had almost the full room that came to share and listen to your education and then talk and actually create their own medicine bags. So that was a really powerful component of that session as well. And walking away from that, we do have a report that was published thanks to our partners at SAMHSA and the Service Members, Veterans, and Their Families Technical Assistance Center. The next steps that are happening, you see on the board behind me right now. We're going to be having conversations all across the next, well, we have been since we convened in August with community partners, and we're working to identify 3 inaugural communities that will help be champions for trying out the models that our friends at the gathering and the voices from the listening sessions have suggested that we partner around. This, we hope to have a community coalition that will begin in the Alaska area that will be serving veterans that are identified as Alaska Natives and their families and communities. We're looking to engage with an urban Indian-based organization that will help lead a coalition there, so we can build out that framework. And then also we're partnering to identify one more community. The approach will be that it will be a multi-year effort where we're going to be doing a lot more site visits. We learned from our folks that we need to go on site. We need to start the planning process with that community right away and allow for them to be in the driver's seat of the technical assistance requested. And we're also looking to help to not just have a one and done in the approach to building out the frameworks, but the most powerful component that came of the work that you saw here is this need for this nation-to-nation sharing of the amazing best practices. And we will be having a second gathering in this summer where we hope to get more communities to come together and talk about the amazing programs that they're doing within their jurisdictions and within their communities to help support their service members, veterans, and their families. Just because we hope that folks will know and keep us on our toes and keep us honest, this is our approach. This is the timeline that we're hoping to roll out. And if you see the VA or SAMHSA pop up on your caller ID, it's probably because we're hoping that your community, and I'll say this to Director Sylvester already, we're hoping your community might be one of those champions that will help take us up and work with us to move forward this amazing new model. So I'll hand things back to Stacy to wrap us up, but just to say that this information we shared today was kind of the hopes and the knowledge that probably a good 1,000 voices provided to us over the last year and a half, and we hope that by the time that we've been able to kind of share that request forward to all of you, that we're recognizing and kind of honoring the wishes of those folks that gave us this knowledge.
I'm going to tease Cicely for her caller ID reference, which is a little bit dated. And I'm also going to say if you see our email addresses pop up in your inboxes as well, please know that we are really excited about collaborating as we move forward in this initiative. We certainly don't identify ourselves as the subject matter experts in this space. As mentioned, we see ourselves as conveners to help really tie together folks who are already doing amazing work in this space and to elevate these practices. I was hoping to close by maybe the three of us sharing one word that to us represents what is important about continuing these efforts in the space of suicide prevention for American Indian and Alaska Native veterans. And I'll start. My word, as always, is legacy. I think it's so important to look at our ancestors and elders and how they've been impacted, and looking forward to today, where the service members of today receive behavioral health support that has really advanced just in the generations, in the past few generations. Also in learning about the concept of 7 generations that many American Indian and Alaska Native tribes honor, and thinking about how our actions today will impact 7 generations in front of us. That's what's so important to me about suicide prevention in this space. What about you, Cicely?
For me, it would be wisdom or knowledge, the power of sharing our wisdom with one another and allowing for that knowledge that has been suppressed for many generations, and the ability to share that now in a space that feels not only embracing of it, but also hungry for that knowledge to be shared. Ivan.
My word choice is unity, to create support from one another, especially through cross-agency. I would like to see more collaboration going on with cross-agencies, within our tribal communities, and also bringing support with one another from tribe to tribe to bring support to bring this program full force, and bringing support for our tribal veterans to get that help and that healing that they need. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you once again to our friends from SAMHSA, as well as Mr. Ivan Small, for sharing that information. We certainly appreciate partnering with you on a regular basis. I know we're starting to wind down towards the end of the day, but I guarantee you that this next presentation is going to keep you motivated for the rest of the summit, if not the rest of the week. I'm actually going to bring up Dr. Carmela Roybal, Senior Advisor for the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, to introduce our next presenters.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, everyone online. I know we had lots viewing, over 500. We had over 500 guests attend yesterday online to be part of this moment. And right now, it's really a pleasure to introduce the Native American Budget and Policy Institute's Community Outreach Team. The Institute is out of the University of New Mexico and was built to support the 24 tribes of New Mexico, tribal leadership and communities. But what was found was that a lot of the community action or taking the different research and different opportunities were not actually reaching the community. And we realized that there was a space where our youth, in many ways, were falling through the cracks, and we needed to provide. And rather than talk about suicide prevention, we talk about instilling the power of hope and faith back in our community. So a little bit different. I'd like to introduce two very special guests who are going to come up from our outreach team. We have Brenda Atencio of Okewinge. Brenda is a member of the Grammy family. Right, she's also a NAMI winner and has been nominated this year. She has done countless events to support community, from our littlest children, early Head Start, to our elders. And we have Camilla Cruz, who is an assistant professor at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And together the team is going to, one, introduce themselves, but be ready to move, to feel alive as we do this showcase. And actually, you are all going to experience the life that they bring to our children in our communities and with our elders. So, kundawaha for being here, and I'm going to pass it to you. Is it good? Okay. You might need to push your chair a little further back so you'll be able to get up and move around. Louder.
Music is medicine. So please listen to this old rhythm. When Tewa men were away, the women would go to war, defending planted grains, seeded wombs, hiding doulas and legends in underground storerooms, repositories of birth, elk bone brine, and this story. A bow slept in the man's place, taught, practiced, shined by juniper sap, itching to quiver. Spinach root smeared by skilled fingers under the eyes, ear to ear. A dark carnal line. Left cheekbone, adolescence, over the nose, motherhood, across towards death. War songs hummed in the night. Daughters clung to their brothers, adopting their mothers' names, women's mature black pottery, every prayer on. The planting belonged to the war women. Songs calling squash and earth under delicate feet. Rematriation is an old rhythm sung by a people who knew the land and children need to nurse. This poem will appear in my debut poetry collection. And as Satya Faith, Grandmother Faith, has been saying to us these past 2 days, this is place-based knowledge. And the place that we come from, Brenda, Dr. Roybal, myself, Kateri, is Okeawinge Pueblo in northern New Mexico. And that translates to Village of the Strong People. And in 1680, it was our ancestors who started the Pueblo Revolt. When the conquistadors came, we fought and we rose up and we pushed them out of New Mexico, and they left. And we were a peaceful people for a time. And hearing that song on stage, our basket dance, is so grounding, and it reminds us exactly where we're from. And our Mapope, the leader of the Pueblo Revolt, is the statue in the entranceway of the Capitol building, where we've been fortunate enough to go visit. So this reminder of poetry and language and words and rhythm and songs is our intro to our presentation on Music is Medicine.
Thank you, Camilla. That was beautiful. So we come to you from Okeawinge. I am also known as G. Precious, award-winning hip-hop, pop, R&B artist. And we bring music as medicine, as a way to help our youth, to reach our children in a space that many of us do not reach them. They listen to many mainstream artists, the messages of people, of others who do not understand our native way of life. And I thought, what better way to reach our children, our youth, our elders, our adults, than through music? Because music, the drum, is the first thing we hear, our mother's heartbeat, which mimics the drum. Mother Earth, our connection. When we hear songs, we hear the prayers, we hear the stories of our ancestors, we hear the stories of our people, the stories of war, the stories of peace, the stories of planting, of harvesting, of hunting. We hear the many stories through music. And so today we bring to you Music is Medicine. And one of our goals is to help our youth, our children, to help them heal, to help them understand themselves and the life passages that they are going through, to help them deal with things that we see growing up on a reservation. Many times we paint a pretty picture of what reservation life looks like. But that's not the truth. To many of us, we see the downside. We see the drugs, the alcohol, the homelessness, the suffering of our people. We see our children being raised by their grandparents because their parents are no longer around due to substance. These are the issues we see. And we hear the stories of many children as we travel from school to school into the various communities. And we share our lives of being on the reservation and how we overcame many of those struggles. I myself come from a family of 8 children, 6 brothers, and 2 of us sisters. And our life was one of alcohol abuse, substance. We were raised by our grandmother, and that was the life that I grew up in. But she taught me the importance of our tradition, of our culture, of our native language, our heritage, where I come from, the bloodline that I carry, my name, the importance of our traditional attire, why we wear what we wear, the dances, the ceremonies, the meaning. And those are the things that we want to take our children back to. We want our children to realize who they are, where they come from, what were their parents' struggles, what were their grandparents' struggles, and how we can motivate and inspire them to do and to be better, to be something greater, to be the voice, that power of our ancestors, because they did not give their lives for us to be held down by substances, to be held down by anything other than living life and being greater.
Referencing Satya Faith again, grandmother Faith, I love that she mentioned that her daughter was a beloved daughter. And as Dr. Roybal had mentioned, our goal at the Native American Budget and Policy Institute is to be aware, but to be positive and empower and make every single child on our reservation and other communities feel special and feel as though they matter and their footprint on this earth is equally as important as ours. So a little background, we got carried away, we haven't introduced ourselves. I'm Camila Cruz. As Dr. Roybal mentioned, I'm an assistant professor at the Institute of American Indian Arts located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I teach creative writing. I have my master's in poetry, and I teach journalism and fiction, creative nonfiction, where I'm allowing my students to write their own narratives. I'm encouraging them to go into their communities and write the stories that only they can write from their perspectives. And that's my goal as an assistant professor, is to allow all of the youth that I'm working with to find their voices and encourage them to write to the best of their knowledge, because their stories are important, and we're changing that narrative.
Thank you. She is so awesome. I love having her as my co. We bounce off of each other. And so our presentation as we travel is very interactive. So we are going to interact with you today, and we hope that you will interact with us. As we stated, music as medicine. Within our Oke Owinge Lifeway, we teach the Lifeway model of earth, air, fire, and water, the elements that created every single one of us. And so you all have a microphone at your table. What comes to mind when you think of earth? Earth is your body. What comes to mind when you think of Mother Earth and your body? the sacredness.
For me, I think about breath as if I'm breathing.
Breath.
I think of medicine, Hejuta.
Medicine.
I think of water.
Water.
It's almost all water, and we're almost all water.
Nurture and strength.
Nurture and strength, yes. All of that in earth, in body. What comes to mind when you think of air, your spirit? Your breath, your life way.
In my tribe, our word for breath and spirit is the same, and it's enhes.
Beautiful. It's your voice, right? It's our languages. Our languages do not exist without air, without the breath.
In our Tewa language, the word for breath is ha. Our breath. What comes to mind when you think of fire? A life force. Don't be shy, yes.
In California, a lot of the native plants need fire to have a really good harvest. So a lot of the oak trees, when they burn, we used to know our, traditional sacred fire and how to use that and to get really good, oak tree harvests. And even our sages do better when they've been around smoke of fires.
It makes me think of the women yesterday at the end, right? Speaking about lighting the fire to call a baby spirit in. And a fire is so much of our life and our passion, and so often it's associated with destruction, but it's also the reemergence, right? And it's the finishing, and it's the creation, and it's mending all of the air around it, right? And it's combining the air, the oxygen, the earth, the wood.
I think of warmth and coming together in community.
Warmth, yes.
For the Navajo people, it's the fire keepers are the women. We take care of the fire stick. That's our role.
Thank you.
It also represents love. When we talk about fire, we look at it as our forefathers or grandmothers, or Che, or Masana.
For us, in Choctaw ways, we exist as a people as long as we keep our fire. The fire is creator on earth, giver of all things, the one who beholds all things, whose eye is the sun.
Fire for a Navajo comes in many forms. One, it's protection and the cleansing of your soul, but a connection to those who have passed, and you reach to them spiritually through the fire.
Thank you.
Our next element, water. What comes to mind when you think of water? Someone mentioned our being, our body. Water. Very powerful, yes?
Mede Wabu, sacred water.
Water is powerful. It makes a way. You can't control water, although we try. but water always makes a way. Rushing, strength. Many of us have, through water, contact to the spirit world. For us, it is the water serpent. Many of us have the water serpent. In our language, it's an avanyu. Water beings.
Brenda tells a story of when her and I travel and we get to go on our community outreach and the importance of finding the home water source for whatever it is that we are and greeting it. Just as we greet each other and just as we greet the communities that we're going out to work with and the children and the youth and the elders, it is equally as important to go out and greet the water, the home source, and give it your name, and give it the name from our people, and allow it to be heard. And that sustenance and what water provides us and that energy and the flow that we need for that day, once we've made that connection and we greet the water, it then provides back for us in return. Everyone's been talking a lot today about nature and the animals and how important they are. And it's equally as true no matter where it is that we're traveling from. So everyone who came and we're in this room together, the animals are missing you, right? Your mountains are missing you, your lakes are missing you, and that reminder that all of those elements, earth, air, water, fire, are within our bodies. And you brought that particular water with you from home, and you brought your particular fire with you. And now you're gathering all of the elements that we're bringing today and all the conversations that we've been having, and you get to take all those elements back home with you. And you have that gathered knowledge. And your fires may be a little brighter, and you've earned more knowledge, and you've earned more friendships and more kinship, and you get to take that all back home. With that, we do speak about this idea of these elements and, as Brenda mentioned, our creation story, which has the avanyu, the water serpent. We also have a story about the original pottery that was formed. And at the Native American Budget and Policy Institute, we spoke about what is this idea of connecting our elders and our children and those in our community to something physical, something that they can visualize or something they can go home and feel and touch. So we spoke about this idea of the first pottery. And you may notice you have crayons on your table. You might want to grab one of the papers in front of you, as well as a crayon. And I'm going to read you the story of the first pottery and how it was formed. Now, this is our tewa pot. This is a tewa pottery. As I'm reading this, you're wanting to visualize or think about yourself and your own community and your journey and what brought you here today. And you're going to sketch, draw, color, write, and you're going to decide what kind of pottery you are. What formed you, what shape you are, what color you are. If you have cracks, most importantly, what your pottery holds. Are you carrying water? Are you carrying medicine? What's inside of you? Are you filled with good food? So I'm going to read real quick, when the first pottery was formed. Elements swirled and gathered to forge the first pottery, a vessel to carry water, medicine, hope. Like the human body made of earth, brimming with curiosity, this pottery would be tried in fire. Earth leaned into water, allowing itself to turn into soft silt, sisters swirling together into a clay to be molded and coiled. A beautiful form emerged, balanced and buoyant, but it was vulnerable and unfinished. Air came to whisper patience into the clay. The pottery was evolving, drying, aging, absorbing. Fire and air worked together to seal the vessel. Withstanding heat makes the pottery resilient and true. The finished pottery represents the people, malleable in youth, identifiable in form, fierce through the flames. Like the first pottery, we all are clay, re-emerging from the fires, finished, strong, and with purpose in our own shapes. Now think about your shape and your pottery, and what do you look like? And did your grandmothers form you? Did you form you? Who has coiled all of your clay? If you're painted, if you're finished, if you're polished, do you have beautiful designs on you? So take a moment and see what you develop.
So we've talked a lot about the past, the past, the past, the trauma. Those pots that's your future. So write about your future. Write about what you'll look like when you fix those cracks. That happens maybe in birth, right? Or in childhood, those are the traumas that break the pot. So now you're thinking the pot in the future. Let's move into the future, where all of those pieces are put back together, because many of our children aren't going to put their pieces back together. We're teaching them a lot about the brokenness, but we need to tell them and teach them about the power and self-healing and the power that they have internally to rebuild those pots. If we can't get along in this room, how do you expect our children in the streets and in our communities to get along? So we as leaders in our respective positions and places have to really think about how we take care of each other and how we work together. So feel like a child, feel good while you draw, because it feels good to be a kid when you're innocent, right? And all those worries and stress. So your future is in those crayons, is in your hand, is in the vision that you're going to create. But thinking forward.
What's also great about these is when you get home and your family who has patiently shared you with us, who's waiting for you at home, your children, you're going to be able to show them something tangible, right? So often we return from these conferences and summits and all we have to share is a summary of what we learned, and maybe it doesn't vibe with our family, right? And they don't quite get it, but you have something that you can take home and show your children and say, this is what I drew, right? This is what was asked of me. And as seriously as I take myself in my day job, and as tough as all the policies are that we're trying to pass, and every hard step and long hours that we're working on to bring all of this to fruition, you're still a child at heart. And acknowledging that is part of the healing. It's part of reflecting back on who you were when you came into this world.
What does anybody want to share their pottery? What thoughts were going through your mind as you drew your pottery? What traumas for yourself did you acknowledge? What traumas of your grandparents, your ancestors, what traumas carried forward into your pot? And what parts of your pot are yourself healing those traumas? Anybody want to share? No? Shy? Yes.
I can get us started.
Yes.
I drew, so in the Museum Support Center, which is where the Smithsonian holds all of its collections, there's some baskets from one of my ancestors, which I've actually gone to visit, which is a very difficult experience because it's like our culture is in a cabinet across the country from my tribe. So I drew one of her designs on the pottery. It's the lightning bolt design, which means that you are like for the people, like you're there to serve the people, which is a lot of how I spend my day in service, which is very important to me. And also reclaiming my tribe's culture is important to me too. So that's what we got here. All right, someone else.
It's beautiful. Thank
Beautiful,
you.
yes. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of a literal person, so when you said a pot, I actually drew a pot. And I made it kind of a copper color because when we do our water work, we use copper vessel. And so then I put water in it, and right down the middle, though, there's kind of a seam, a crack that's been fixed. And I think, you know, when there is a crack and when it is even like a scar, right, it becomes stronger. And then I put a little cork because then when we make when I start thinking about the water drum, and when we fill that drum with water and medicine, and the last thing we do is we blow breath into it, and that activates that drum. And so even though it's not a drum, I thought it should have a cork because it should have that breath of life in it. And so I've been in recovery. I don't even like that word anymore. I've been healing. I've been healing from using drugs and alcohol since I was 23 years old. So that's 49 years that I've been clean. And I think, you know, when we're healing, it's like the only disease, right, where we're expected to become better people than we were before. And I kind of think that's happened. I think, you know, as a teenager, my sisters used to call me the bad apple. And but now I'm kind of a good apple, you know? Made better choices, a little tart sometimes, but still pretty crispy.
Thank you.
I think we carry many of those things with us. You know, just small sayings that we grow up with. You know, just those little things that we may think don't cause a chip, don't cause a crack. I always share my story of growing up. You know, many of my aunts, many people around me would always tell me that I was going to be exactly like my mother. They would talk about her alcoholism. They would talk about how many children she had, and they made it more shameful than anything. And they would always say that, you're going to be exactly like your mother. And we have so many people in our lives that chip at us, put little negative things into that pot. And our pots take those small cracks, and sometimes they completely break. And how do we help our children heal when those around them that are there to protect them are actually helping to create those cracks? Instead of coiling our children and building them up, inspiring them, motivating them, making them stronger, we tear them down. And we see that when we go into the schools and we try to motivate our kids. We try to build them back up. We talk to them about their vessel, respecting themselves, the sacredness of themselves, and how they have the power, they have the control of who they allow to help them coil, who they allow to help break or chip. They control the design of their pot. They control who they allow into their lives. And we always talk about peer pressure in many of the instances. Sometimes our bad influences are our own friends. And sometimes we have to step away. We have to walk away. We have to leave those negative people behind in order for us to continue, in order for us to succeed. And those are some of the messages that we carry into the schools. We touch on all the aspects that each individual school, each individual community brings to us, whether it's substance, suicide, diabetes, for our elders, Alzheimer's, dementia. We go in and we speak on many topics, motivating and inspiring and helping to build our community, because that's what we need, is to build our community up. And so we're going to do a little interaction right now. I want you to just listen to a few instrumentals that I'm going to play for you, that I play for the students when I go into the school. I play them some instrumentals and I tell them, write down a few words that flows through your body as you hear these. What kind of emotions ran through your body as you listened to those various musical selections? Did you feel like you were on a little roller coaster there for a minute?
And so many of you were tapping your foot. I saw it. Or bobbing your head. There was some movement going on there.
We talk about the importance of music and how music affects our mood. And just in that short time, you went through various emotions, and very quick. You kind of started out a little solemn, yes? How many of you felt sad for a moment? You may have felt hurt. And then you heard the police sirens and the EMTs running in. And you may have felt a bit of panic, wondering, wow, what's going on? What's happening out there? And then you felt inspired. Yes, I'm a firm believer. I've got nothing to lose. It's your time to shine. You felt, yeah, I can do it. I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. And then I hit you with riding in my Indian car. And the sunglasses went on, and you fixed your rear view mirror and your mirror hanging on with duct tape. You fixed all that, yes? Checked yourself out and said, hey, I look good. Huh? Good day to be indigenous, cruising the res. And then you heard the powwow song, round dance. How did you feel about that? Good. Made you want to dance. We've got a radio station out home, goes by Singing Wire. I don't know if many of you heard of it. But I had to call and complain one day because I was trying to stain my deck, and they kept playing those good songs. I was out there dancing instead of, staining the deck. I had to call them and complain when they did the 15-minute shout-out. What are some of the feelings you felt? You're smiling. I know you want to share.
I just love that sound is going throughout this building. I'm like, yes.
Who knows what they're thinking upstairs?
Yes, they're probably like, what in the world is going on down there? What else went through your mind? Through your heart? As you listened to those various songs. I know some of you probably got taken back when you heard riding in my Indian car. Took you back to an awesome time, yes. Native empowerment. The beauty of our people, the strength of our people.
Now imagine this exercise with high school students, right? We have presented to 280 high school students at a time, fourth graders, fifth graders, 4-year-olds. Brenda has presented at our Okewinge Head Start program where my youngest son attends school. He's 4, and he does not believe me that I know G. Precious. So G. Precious is one of his favorite artists, and we listen to her 7 albums in the car. And they're on their favorite playlist and on rotation, and my kids are like, you don't know her. You don't even know her, is what my 4-year-old says. I'm like, I really do. No, you don't. She's my favorite. So she goes and presents, and we do this exercise, and we do this exercise to a room full of youth. And children who don't know that they have trauma or that they're dealing with anything, they draw their pottery. And then they stay back after, and they talk to Brenda and I. And they let us know, I didn't know I was feeling this way. And we're helping them heal just by giving them space, just by letting them know that they're important, and by taking them out of whatever role or responsibility their parents or their schools or their communities are placing on their shoulders and telling them your job is to go to school and your job is to learn, or your job is to be the oldest sister, or your job is to win the basketball championship. We wipe all of that away and we just give them paper, music, and crayons. And they realize that they're dealing with something, or they haven't had a moment to tell someone that something's hurting or something's wrong. And we allow them that space, and that's healing. And listening to music when you were on your way here this morning. How many of you had AirPods on when you were on the plane, right? And you have a playlist that you're listening to when you're flying in. You have music you're going to put on once you land back at your airport and you get into your car, and you're going to put on your favorite music that you probably don't want anyone else to know that you're listening to, right? And you're like, oh man, okay, we've got some Swifties in here. And they're like, no, I can't tell people at the summit that I really like Taylor Swift because that's embarrassing, right? You have your music and you have your playlist and you have your own way of healing that's through music. But you're not giving yourself the space to acknowledge that. But we're telling you it's okay. But listening to your favorite song is necessary. And when you're thinking about all of the notes you've been writing over this conference and all of the heavy work that's ahead of everyone, how to make everything and all these conversations work together, and how these 4 states are going to make this policy a success, that's a lot of heavy work. Put on music. Listen to some music while you're debriefing and you're looking at all of your notes and you're thinking about everything ahead of you. And your perspectives will change, and you'll feel better about all the work ahead.
All right, so we've come to my favorite part of the program. I always ask for a couple of volunteers to join us. Come up here and sweat with us. This is part of stepping out of your comfort zone, not worrying about your folks at your table and what they're going to think about you, cutting up the rug.
If
Believe
no one
me.
volunteers, we're going to make everyone do it if no one
Yes,
volunteers.
everybody's going to do it. You're going to get up out there anyway, but we're looking for a couple of brave souls that'll come up here. We did give
Yes,
Dr. Carmela we gave her the task of finding us at least 3 folks to join us. Believe me, our elders in New Mexico can do this dance. And if they can do this, believe me, you can do it. And I make them do the full 3.5 minutes. I'm not going to make you do 3.5. I may have you do about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. We need 2 more folks. Believe me, I give away prizes, so I do this at all the schools. I'm like, if you want to win, you will come up here and be totally cool and awesome. Woo-hoo. And you got the bragging rights of saying you danced with G. Precious at the Healing Summit. I know you want to dance. Come on. You are so happy. Where is is she deciding if she wants to twirl or not? My oldest elder that did this dance was probably about 87 years old, and she had a blast. Our youngest that has done this was probably 18 months or less.
14. She's 14 months. The baby. My baby.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Do this.
So we're going to get, all right, we got our third. Yes. If I can get Dr. Mella to come up here and press play for us. Now, you guys will follow me and all the cool little moves I'm going to show you. Like I said, we're only going to do maybe about 1.5 minutes. Yes, I'm stuck. Oh, you won't cramp. We'll make sure you don't cramp, but make sure you give yourself enough space. You can come on this side so you can see me move. And I always force Camilla to do this dance as well. She should know it by now, but she still messes up. I'm like, come on, how many schools have we gone to and you still haven't gotten it? So I'm gonna hand the mic off and then we're gonna do this. Now, your job out there isn't just to sit there. Your job is to clap. Your job is you're gonna do chair exercise. That's what you're doing. You got it? So every move you see us doing, you're doing it in your chair.
Okay, everybody ready? All right, guys, ready? Go wild. That's not wild enough. That's not wild enough.
All right, give it up for our awesome volunteers.
Thank you.
Now, make sure you see me at my table over here. I'm going to hook you up with a USB that has, I think, 6 albums of mine on there. Like I said, I love giving away gifts to our youth, whether it's T-shirts, stickers, you name it. We hook them up. But this is part of our music as medicine that we take into all the schools, communities, and we just love working with our youth.
That original song of Brenda's, which her and her wife, Kateri, will now go home and teach Zumba for. So they're flying out so that way they can get home and teach their community Zumba class, on top of everything else that Brenda does. And she incorporates the youth into her music. So my oldest daughter, she's 9, she gets to tour with Brenda and she gets to dance on stage with her, and the energy that this brings her and the purpose that it allows her to, I'm all out of breath. Sheesh. That's what these mocks were made for. It gives her a sense of purpose, right? And she dealt with bullying, and it helps with her self-esteem. It gives her a sense of purpose. It makes her feel alive. And that's what Brenda's able to do with these students and these youth and these elders, and inviting the community to dance and Zumba and sing and just have our own tribal member come out of the speakers in our car is a really big deal. And it lets them know that they can do something, and they can be something, and they can be whatever it is they want to be. So thank you, Brenda.
Yes. Any questions? Any questions on our work, on our music, on our creative writing? I'm surprised.
Can I get your contact information?
Yes, you sure can.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to comment to your presentation, and in terms of reaching out to each of us. I think it really opens us up as a people. One, for so long, with the layers of trauma that our people have survived and have overcome, but are struggling with in various ways. This is a very, very positive planting of a seed that takes us back to who we are. And I really enjoyed this, and I can just feel the nurturing and not just the love, but the empowerment of bringing out who we are, who we should be, who we used to be. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Kundawoha. And that is one of the things that we strive to stress in our children. No matter what they come from, no matter their background, I always tell kids, I grew up poor, very poor. You know, my grandmother had the task of raising all of us. And I always tell them, no matter what you come from, no matter the life that you've lived, you can always be, you can always do, you can always become something better. And I always tell them, I'm a living example of that. And my latest tour was called Earthen Roads to Red Carpets, because I tell them I come from nothing, and I worked so hard to become something, to follow my dreams, my love, which is music. And I always tell them, don't let my hip-hop persona fool you. I do have my master's in legal studies. And a lot of them sit there going, what? You went to school too? Yes. I stress education. Educating our kids, it's important. My grandmother always said, with an education, you will go further in life. Don't struggle the way I did. And so she always pushed me to get an education. Oh, she saw the love of my music, my dance, my everything. You know, dancing in the house meant I got to clean the whole house, because she said I was kicking up dust. So it got the whole house clean. But I always encourage that. We encourage that, following their dreams, following their path, no matter what it is.
Thank you. To quote Satya Faith one more time, she was speaking about our divine paths and what brought you here today, and what brought you here was to come dance. That was the purpose. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you once again to G. Precious and to Camilla for getting us out of our seats, for sharing their presentation, for having us really think about the work that we've been doing, not just today, but through our lifetime, for having us interact different parts of our brain and our body to this afternoon. So thank you both. At this time, we are going to go into our last discussion of today to help us reflect on what we saw and learned yesterday and today, and what the next steps might be as we look into the future, and how we can all work together to strengthen our cultures and bring wellness to our communities. Please welcome Stacy Akafee Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Affairs at the Indian Health Service, who will moderate our final discussion with our distinguished panelists, Rosalind So, Director of the Indian Health Service, and Jessica Schubel, Special Assistant to the President for Healthcare at the Domestic Policy Council for the White House. Thank you.
All right, everybody stand up. Take a quick stretch.
We're going to do a dance for you.
Yes.
We are?
The Macarena. Take a quick stretch. Give yourself a hand. We're almost to the end of the day, to the end of an awesome summit. So give yourselves all a big round. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We are at our last session. As Lillian mentioned, my name is Stacy Ekefee. I'm a citizen of the Oglala Lakota Nation from Wolf Creek, South Dakota, and I serve as the Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Affairs at the Indian Health Service. And I'm really excited to be at this end in this conjuncture with the Director of the Indian Health Service, Ms. Rosalind So, who is the 11th IHS Director. She is a citizen of the Navajo Nation. She is our second woman to lead the Indian Health Service. So let's, yes, give her a big round. And she leads the Indian Health Service, which, you know, a fun fact is that we are the 17th largest healthcare organization in the country. And with us is also Jessica Schubel, who is a special assistant to the president and for healthcare at the White House Domestic Policy Council. And prior to joining the White House, Jessica worked for the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, where she examined issues related to Medicaid and other coverage issues. Prior to that, Jessica served as the Senior Policy Advisor for the Director for the Center for Medicaid and CHIP Services at CMS during the Obama administration. So I'm glad to have both of them here today. I heard somebody from the audience ask how we were going to wrap this up, what was our next steps. And so just a couple of questions for each of them to get us to our next steps and our pathway forward. I would be remiss if I didn't mention too that the director is also the lead for the White House Council on Native American Affairs and for the Health Committee. And this Health Summit, the Traditional Healing Summit, was one of our priorities and deliverables for this year. And it's been a work in progress, but I think over the past 2 days, we have been able to see the fruits of that work and looking at how medicine comes in many different forms in our communities and across Indian country. So with that, Director, what has IHS done to expand traditional healthcare practices within that medical system?
Thank you, Stacy, and again, good afternoon, everyone. Before I say anything, I really want to just do a shout out to all of the planners of this. I really love this, all of the attention on the veterans and the needs of our veterans. And then I think as I've been just kind of thinking over the last couple of days, you know, we get to stand on the shoulders of our grandparents. What a wonderful opportunity. Maybe they might not completely agree with us with what we're doing here and how much we're talking about this. But I think that they would be glad that we're taking some bold steps here as part of this administration to lift up our people in a way that we haven't done before by developing policy and making this happen. As I've been thinking about this and what we are doing at the Indian Health Service, we are going to continue to do the work that we have been doing, which is to expand the services that we already are doing right now in many of our IHS facilities. And we want to make sure that we're doing it more coordinated and more in line and with our tribal partners as we continue to move forward. We know that we have already aligned position descriptions. We're already doing work, developing policies that have been in place. But what else can we do in that space to make sure that we continue to strengthen the programs that we already have in place? But there's also, I think, opportunity as we move forward as to how is it that we can share some of this work that we are doing at the Indian Health Service to make sure that, tribes don't have to replicate, that we give all of the resources and support to tribes if they choose to do this work. And then finally, while we know that there's no price tag that we can put on the traditional medicine that we're talking about here, we do know that there is a cost to us when we do this work, whether privately or in our healthcare facilities right now. And so with those resources, I think we can continue to expand and do more for the people that we serve.
Thank you, Director. Jessica, from your perspective and from where you sit at the White House, what have been some of the administration's key successes for healthcare?
Yeah, I just want to echo the director's thanks to all of you for all of your support in advancing healthcare during this administration. I've been very blessed to work for a boss who believes healthcare is a right and not a privilege. And I have served since day one of the administration. And I hope you give me a little grace if I do get a little choked up. It has been a very emotional time the last couple of weeks. But I have been so proud of the work that I have been able to do in serving your communities and across the country and our fellow Americans to help lower costs, lower insurance premiums for those that purchase their health insurance on HHH.gov and the state-based marketplaces. I've been excited to see that we've expanded coverage. So 9 million more people have health insurance on HHH.gov and through the ACA today than when I first started my job. And that is I'm very honored to be able to have been part of that. But it relied a lot on your help in getting people signed up for coverage and making sure everybody knew what they had available to them. And also the other thing I've been fortunate to work on is making coverage more accessible. So we have been able to, in Medicaid, be able to impose requirements on states to make sure that the care that they're delivering is quality care, that people can access the care that they need in a timely manner, that people who need long-term care services at home are finally being able to, find care workers by making sure that the states are paying the care workers an appropriate wage. And, we've been also making coverage work better. We have been focused on closing what we call the family glitch in marketplace coverage. So more people, family members who can't access affordable health care can now enroll on HHH.gov. We're making sure that people aren't being, scammed into junk insurance and, getting stuck holding the bag and having high healthcare costs when they need care at the, most critical time. And we're doing things to make sure that people have access to mental health care in the same way that they do physical health care by strengthening the mental health parity rules. So I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity to do all of these things, and I'm hopeful that we can continue the progress that we've seen over the last 4 years.
Thank you. And on that note, we talked a little bit earlier about the demonstration waivers that are happening for traditional healing in 4 of the states. And we've seen from the presentations places like SAMHSA and ACF who are integrating traditional lifeways and our indigenous knowledge into our healing practices and how that is being successful in our communities. But one of the things that I think both of you can offer some insight is how do tribes partner with us as agencies, with their states, with their local healthcare authorities to help expand and sustain this momentum that we have with traditional practices into the medical systems. Director, do you want to start?
Sure. I think there are a number of ways that tribes are already doing this. That's a great thing about it, is that this is not new. It's certainly not new to Indian country. And tribes know how to make sure that they take the smallest amount of monies that we give them sometimes at the Indian Health Service, and they know how to spread that, and they know how to make it work. So I'm going to lean into that, and I'm going to lean into, again, as I said at the beginning of this conference, is that this is not and cannot be driven by the federal government. We have to leave this in the hands of tribes, tribal leaders, and for what they know best in their tribal communities. So it's really the flip side, that we can support whatever efforts that are being made, and where there are good practices or best practices, that we share those across Indian country. And so again, people don't have to reinvent anything, and that we are able to then build on previous successes by other tribal communities. So that's what I'm hoping for, and I'm hoping that we continue to, again, educate as we move forward as well. I think education, especially in this political climate that we're in right now, we need to make sure that we keep telling our story. We need to make sure that we share the successes that our tribal veterans have had as a result of the services that are being provided. And so those are going to be what's going to change as we move forward. And then finally, speaking in the mental health, that I know the president's also very much, that's on the top of his list. These are also additional ways that we can address mental health issues and provide more access to care in tribal communities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us here. And then I think there's a lot more that we can learn from our tribal partners, and then help elevate those successes. Thank you.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think, not to state the elephant in the room, there is a new team that is coming in, and I think that it is important that, echoing what the director mentioned, that the tribes, take a leading role here. I'm hopeful that we will see the next Trump administration continue the progress that we've seen in Medicaid waiver approvals. I know my colleagues from CMS came and spoke about that on Monday. Those are, groundbreaking. I worked early on in my career when I was at CMS. I worked on Arizona's Medicaid waiver, and I was there when the state requested to use Medicaid funding to pay for traditional healing services. So it was a very personal thing when I saw that CMS approved it, because I had seen the evolution of the thinking. And I hope that, we continue to see progress in that space. And I think it is up to the tribes to continue to, advocate for your communities in making sure that these services, which are critical, can continue to move forward. I would also suggest thinking about how you can make innovation with your states and through different state partners. If the federal government might throw up some additional roadblocks that you haven't seen in the past. I think that as in putting on my old advocacy hat, you can definitely go to the state legislature and make sure that there are differing pathways and creating new partnerships at the state level. And I think the third thing as we move into this new kind of era is showing with real people's stories how important these services are, show the impact. And I think that will help continue the progress that we've seen. And obviously there's more to do, but I remain hopeful that we will continue to see that progress.
Thank you both, and those are really good words to talk about the advocacy and the leadership of tribes. And just a reminder to those that are online and that are participating in the audience that we still have a workforce that is here that helps to carry on initiatives, that helps to continue to carry on that communication across administrations. And the great work that we did over the last 2 days is something that I think all of the federal participants that are here will continue to carry on, so that we're not having this great work get lost in the shuffle, or the work that we do at our local communities, from food sovereignty to the work that we do with our veterans, and all of those good things that are wrapped up in the whole picture of what we do to serve our people, for prevention, for all of those recovery, for our medical systems, all of that. So please keep that in mind. And I just want to give you guys a round of applause and thank you for your leadership, and thank all of you for participating today. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Lillian. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Stacy, Director So, as well as Jessica. We really appreciate sharing our last reflections for the last 2 days. We appreciate all of you coming and spending your time with us over the last 2 days for what we hope is not the last traditional healing summit. We know it takes a lot to spend time away from the work that you have to do. We know it doesn't stop just because you're in this room. We know your families continue to need you, that the emails continue to pile on, that the need continues to be, that it needs to be met. But coming here, hopefully you've been filled with enough stories, information, resources, and receive some healing of your own, spending the last 2 days with us so that you feel renewed and ready to go back to do the work that you're doing in your communities. We want to thank all of our speakers, our panelists, our healers for being with us, sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, and your generosity. Before we leave from this summit, we want to ask Mr. John Pancho Brady of the Native American Church of North America to provide us with some words and with a closing prayer.
First of all, I want to thank the God, the Creator, the Great Spirit here for blessing us all with another new day. You know, I just came from the Dirksen building over there, Indian Affairs office, and man, there's a lot of good motivation over there. Just came out of there just pumped up, ready to do something positive for our community, you know, for our tribes. And we had tribal leadership over there, and we had a lot of good senators even made their way over. And I want to thank my wife here, you know, my number one supporter, you know, but she's always going along and doing the things that I do, what I need to do. I wasn't asked to be where I am today. I'm currently the Native American Church of North America president. I'm going on my second term. And 2024, what you guys are doing here, I want to commend you all, who all had a good helping hand to do what you guys are doing. You know, it's something nice, something wonderful, something beautiful here where everyone can collaborate under one roof to put your ideas, your mind, your heart, your thoughts, your good energy together, you know, to be all singing the same song, to all be in tune, to all be in harmony, you know, with one another, to know what's going on. I know you all come over here because you have a concern within our culture, within our traditional, within our healing, within our communities, within our reservations. So from day one, from your summit, your traditional healing summit, I want to thank everyone that had a good helping hand, from the opening prayer to the song to all the panelists, everyone. You all did a good, outstanding job, I'm sure of it, because there's still a crowd here. You guys must really think a lot of your job and your community and your people, because you're here to the end. So I'm going to commend you all for doing that and upholding to your duties and responsibilities, whether you're a tribal chairman, whether you're a council representative, or whether you're a CEO, whether you're a director. I want to commend you all for doing the best that you can, and all your sacrifices, going to school, going to college, receiving all your certificates and degrees and doing all of that. You know, you're shining light and you're exercising it today. And I want to commend you all for doing that, this traditional healing summit. I was thinking, wow, that's wonderful. They're over here talking all the policy kind of energies and feelings, and we're over at the next building over talking about our American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Here today, we're celebrating its 30 years, and at the same time, it's being violated every day. All the mainstream interests are trying to get their hand in there to make our medicines pill form, synthesize them for the almighty dollar, pharmaceuticals, trying to patent some of our medicines. Can you imagine? So what you guys are doing here, we're going to collaborate. I know we are. And despite the election, despite however you voted, we just got to accept it and move on. It's time to roll our sleeves up and do what we need to do, my good relatives. Because you're all here for something good, something wonderful. So I want to commend you all for being here and being who you are. So I could go on and on, I just feel pumped up from we had an American Indian Religious Freedom Act Summit, I feel really happy, feel good about it, what took place on behalf of all our Native American church relatives. We're advocating too for 2 years ago, they asked us, the Biden administration, we met with the White House staff, they asked us to do an executive order. Can you imagine writing an executive order for the president? Same time, we brought them to our level too as well, grassroots. Not only did we include our holy medicine, we included our sacred sites, we included all our ceremonies, all our plant medicines of this land, traditional foods, and language. We included that all in there. So I thank you all for doing what you're doing here. So all your efforts here, you're not doing this for nothing. You're doing it because for the future, for our kids, our grandkids that are coming up. We want their health. We want their well-being, healthy lifestyles, all of that. We want it to be secured. We want it to be safe down the road. We don't want to be any old way down the road Googling how to do this, how to do that, YouTubing. We want to see it firsthand from everyone here. So I'm going to thank you all for being here. So with that in mind, early, happy Thanksgiving to everyone here. Be thankful, be glad, be happy that you're physically able to move, to get around, to see, to walk, to have all your five senses about your everyday walk of life. So on behalf of our Native American Church of North America, Canada, and Mexico, we wish you the best, all that you're doing, all that you're striving for. On the Congress level, Senate, however it may be, your bill, it could be that way for each and every one of you. The Medicaid, Medicare, however it's going to be, wish you well, wish you the best in your endeavors. Maybe next year we'll come back again. We'll be sharing some good news. For what you guys are asking for, it'll be that way. What we're asking for, it'll be that way too. We could be victorious. We could be victorious, my good relatives. From whatever tribe, whatever ceremonial, not this tribe better than this tribe or this ceremony, we're all equal in God's eye, the Great Spirit. So with that being said, I'm just going to say a prayer here. Our Heavenly Father here, we ask of you here to shine your good light here upon this traditional healing summit from day one. The other day, the panelists, all the good ideas, all the good encouragement, all the goodness that was echoing here throughout this building, that it could all come to pass, come to reality here in a really nice, wonderful way. Just the way the summit, the goal, the plan, the mission, it could be that way here for them, our Heavenly Father, Creator. We ask that of you. All the tribal leaderships, all the directors, the CEOs, everyone that had a good helping hand within the summit here, God, that they could be thankful, that they could have a smile upon them, that they could see some good news, they could hear some good news real soon, real fast, a blink of an eye. Through you, God, it could be that way. Through the power of prayer, the good prayer spirit, the good traditional healing summit spirit here could be a blessing to everyone here. Everyone can feel motivated. They can feel recharged. They can feel inspired to do something nice, something wonderful, something beautiful. Most of all, good health and happiness here could be bestowed upon their effort and their goal and their mission here through this culture, through our traditional healing, the foods, and all the well-being of our native tribes and people here. We all have a wonderful way, a unique way how we believe. Every tribe has a beautiful way how they were taught. The teachings, the upbringing, all of that here, Heavenly Father, we can all be in tune. We can all be in harmony with one another. Be happy for one another, like it for one another. We can be victorious here. We're coming upon this fall time, Thanksgiving time, the good spirit of it. It can bless us all. Bless all the mourners here. Maybe this holiday time, there's going to be an empty seat. You bless those kind of families here that are in mourning, having a hard time. Comfort them, help them, and heal them. Keep our national president here. We thank you for him here, Heavenly Father. We thank you for everything that's going to take place. You bless our native people. Help us to stay strong. Help us to have that good, confident feeling, not to feel any kind of way, but to be thankful, to be proud of who we are, the families we come from, the tribes, the clans here, our Heavenly Father. I could go on, but you know my heart, my mind, how I feel for my good relatives here within this traditional healing summit here. Dade, Wahoba, Nita, Iwaga, Amen. Aho. Thank you.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.